Here we're going to talk about principal-agent relationships. So, when we have either hidden actions or hidden attributes, which we're going to go into in more detail in a second, we can often have relationships between people who are trying to come to some agreement that is mutually beneficial, but where they will have a conflict of interest. So, let's talk about those. A principal-agent relationship, also called an agency problem, arises when two conditions hold. Firstly, there is a conflict of interest between the principal and the agent. The actions or attributes of the agent affect the payoff of the principal in such a way that there is a conflict of interest between the principal and the agent. That's the first characteristic, a conflict of interest between the principal and the agent. Second, with an incomplete contract, the agent's actions or attributes are not known to the principal, or if they are known, they are not verifiable, and so they cannot be subject to an enforceable contract. So the question we might have is, why are both conditions necessary for there to be an agency problem? Imagine the relationship between a principal and agent when there is no conflict of interest, or the contract is complete. What would happen in those contexts? Would we have a problem? Okay, I'm not going to answer those questions, but I would like you to think about them as we go ahead. What happens if there's no conflict of interest and there's just a mutual coincidence of wants, or when there is no contractual incompleteness? So let's think about some examples of principals and agents. Okay, and we're going to classify them into two different categories when we do this. Firstly, problems of hidden actions. Hidden action problems occur when something the agent does, an action they take, something they do, is something that the principal has an interest in, but they don't know. Okay, or again, they lack verifiable information about. For example, something that would be important here is how much effort an employee or worker exerts when they're working for you as a manager or as an owner of a firm. You probably have some sense of how much effort they're exerting, but you cannot probably monitor and understand it with 100% accuracy. So that means that it's typically unverifiable and not possible to take to a third-party enforcement institution. Okay, so first one, hidden actions. Second, what do we say that would be? Hidden attributes. So hidden attributes, these are characteristics of the agent that the principal has some interest in, but they don't know or they lack verifiable information about. For example, are drivers reckless or not? Or are some people seriously ill or not? These are a piece of information that insurance companies might want to know about, for example. Okay, so let's look at a few examples of these in order to make this even clearer. So here's a table. I'm just going to make myself disappear. So here we have a good or a service. We can think about the principal and agent who are trying to exchange some goods. And then you have a buyer and seller relationship. The principal is the buyer, the seller is an agent. Now here's something which is hard to contract for is product quality. And then what's hidden? The hidden thing is the agent's action. How much time they spend or how much effort they exert to provide a good quality good or service. Now, what's strategy that the principal could then adopt in order to try and get the agent to interact with them in a way that they would like? Well, here we have something called a contingent renewal contract. We go into greater depth in terms of exploring such contingent renewal contracts later in the chapter. Okay, now let's talk about health insurance. And here we have a contrast between the insurer, the person offering to sell insurance, and the person who is buying insurance, the insured person. Now, here's a non-contractual action or attribute. Imagine you're a patient and you have a pre-existing condition that the insurer doesn't know about. There we have a hidden attribute problem, and what you might have, for example, is a required medical exam as a condition of getting the insurance in the first place. So this is something that is pretty common in order to understand what the characteristics of someone might be. But if it's also possible for me to hide certain things from a doctor, then it could be the case that even the doctor in the medical examination might not elicit the things that the insurer wants to know. Okay, so insurance, goods, and buying and selling, that's not the only thing we care about. We also think about public policy. So think about the principal being the citizen of a country and the agent being a government official. There it's about policy choices and implementations. We as citizens want the government officials to choose and implement policies that are good for us when they're acting on our behalves. But here the problem is one of hidden actions. How do I know what actions my government or my government officials are taking on my behalf? maybe I have some sense that this person's opinions or what they say is similar to what I think, but does that actually mean they're acting in a way that I want them to act? Maybe, or maybe not. Now here we also have contingent renewals in terms of voting and referenda. So if I think that the person isn't doing what I want them to do, what can I do? I can vote them out of office, right? So I can vote someone else in if I feel that the person I previously voted for isn't doing the job that they said they would. Now, another thing here is if there's a specific policy that I want and the person that I was previously represented by or am represented by is not supporting that policy, then governments can basically adopt referenda to get my opinion directly. All right, so here's the fourth example that we're going to look at, and that is private debt. And there we have the relationship between lenders and borrowers and the level of risk that can be taken by the borrower when the lender is offering the borrower some money. In that context, what happens? It's again a consequence of hidden actions. Does the borrower behave in a way where they're not behaving too riskily such that your money that you have offered them as a lender doesn't just get spent or done away with in ways that you wouldn't want to support? Now, what happens here? There are a couple different ways that people try to solve this problem. You can have the issue of collateral. So collateral is capital that the borrower might have that you can claim if the lender sees that you as the borrower are going to default on your debt. Another possibility is shared control, where we have the possibility for the lender to have part control over what the agent, the borrower, does in this context. So these are a variety of examples of principal-agent relationships that we're going to explore in the book. Another important one, which we don't have in this table, but which we dedicate an entire chapter to, is in the employer-employee or worker-employer relationship. And that's all that we cover in chapter 11.